I want to tell you something about anti-Semitism, and this is, of course, a topic where I have to speak about somewhat in code. These kinds of acts, which we call anti-Semitic, you should know that they are religious acts. They are acts whereby perpetrators of the greatest evils profess their faith in Hashem Echad. And here's why. The shirish of these kinds of acts is a belief that the victims of these acts hold themselves different and aloof from the rest of the world. But not only that they hold themselves that way, but that there is some basis for their aloofness. See, if there would be a nation that would be merely deluded, and due to his great delusion, think that it was different, people would just ignore them. But if the rest of the nations would suspect on some level that this delusion is not merely a delusion, it's not just madness, but it actually has a basis in reality, then they wouldn't take kindly to it. And that is the root of the acts perpetrated against that nation. So then when an evil person does an evil kind of act, what he's what he's really saying is, Ani mamim, I won't say b'emunah shalema, but b'bias HaMashiach, Ani mamin, sha'habari is baruch shemayhu echad, etc., etc. The principles of faith are so rock solid in the human consciousness that even those who profess denial of it, through their obsession and through their actions, indicate a subconscious adherence and acceptance of Shema Yisrael. So the next time you witness to a heinous act that is truly evil on its surface, know that you're also in the presence of what some Sfarim would call a nitzitz of Kedusha, a spark of holiness. And the spark of holiness is that a misguided soul, unfortunately, has no way to express his faith, which he may not even be conscious of, except for by taking something out against the bearers of his faith. So that's what I want to say about acts of anti-Semitism, and something to bear in mind. That the nitzitz of Kedusha burns bright in the darkest acts. And I don't believe that, as some people do, that it's a supernatural occurrence. I believe it's very natural. But it's very natural because people take Emunah very, very seriously. And even the people who, as I said, deny it, they could deny it on the surface, but there's something there that bothers them. There's something there that they sort of believe, half believe, or are somewhat worried about. Something they have to fight with. They feel the need to fight with. Hitler wasn't wrong that the Jewish people present the greatest threat to his ideology. He wasn't wrong about the fact that that is where the threat lies. I just want to say one more thing, really a Gemara that brings this out in an amazing way. Gemara in Yumad of Samach Tesam Beis, this extremely important Gemara, extremely fundamental Gemara. All Gemaras are important, but extremely fundamental idea, where the Gemara says that there was a time where they stopped saying Gadol, Gibor, and Neira in their prayers. They wouldn't say Gibor and they wouldn't say Neira. And the reason why is because in the end of talking about at the time of the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash, and the Nevi'im said, well, where is Hashem's Gevura? Where is his power? And where is his might? In light of everything that the the suffering that the Jewish people were experiencing, Hashem's power and Hashem's Noira, his awesomeness, were not apparent. And therefore, says the Gemara, they were unable to honestly declare and describe Hashem with those attributes. Okay? Now, ultimately, the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, says the Gemara, the Anshe Knesset Gedolah brought back that version of Tefillah, of saying Giba and Naira. And they said, well, what about the fact that God's Gevura, what about the fact that his might is not manifest? So they said this very interesting thing. No, this is the greatest Gevura, it's the greatest might, that despite the fact that all these terrible things are happening, God doesn't respond. Okay? Some irony there. That how do we describe God as being Gibar? Because despite the fact that he's so powerful and could crush all his enemies in an instant, he yet holds himself back and doesn't. So that's his great Gevura. Gevura is Gevura. So, okay, we're not going to go into that now. And what is the Moira? Where do we see Hashem being awesome? Says the Gemara, the fact that one nation could survive Beina Umas. Imale Moira Oisha LaKadosh Baruch Hu Heich Uba Achas Yichola Lehiskayim Bein HaUmas. If not for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Moira, how could one nation survive among the nations? Now, sometimes the Gemara doesn't make it obvious that it's saying something deeper than the surface. And people think the Gemara means the surface meaning, and you take them a little deeper and slowly, and eventually they'll see that the Gemara means a lot more than it indicates on the surface. But here the Gemara makes it very clear on the surface that the Gemara is telling you a deep secret. Because the Gemara says something that prima facie makes no sense. The Gemara says, if not for God's Moira, his awe, how could one nation survive among the nations? That makes zero sense, because every nation is one nation that survives among the nations. What does the Gemara mean by saying, how could one nation survive among the nations? But I'll tell you what it means. It means there's a nation that's called one nation. It's called one nation because it reflects Hashem Echad. That nation now, since the destruction of the Bayis Rishon and from then on, lives in a world called a Bein HaUmas kind of world. A world where there's no nation that truly reflects Hashem Echad. There's no true unity in the world. It's not a world where the idea of Hashem Echad has expression in any one national experience. And yet, at the same time, there's still a nation that's considered one. And that's a great mystery. There's a great mystery that the nation, the Am Echad, the Goy Echad, is considered a Goy Echad, even though nobody can say why. That's what the Gemara is talking about. The Moira of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is expressed in the fact that it's an Uma Achas Bein HaUmais, that it's a world, a Bein HaUmas kind of world. And to all intents and purposes, in all visible ways, there's no Ummah Achas. There's no Ummah that reflects Yichud Hashem in any visible, tangible way. Hashgacha is no longer apparent. The blessing that should come along with Hashem Echad is no longer apparent. And yet, at the same time, there's an Ummah Achas that's considered as such. That is the great Moira. That is the great awe, that even something which is only exists on the subconscious level and has no apparent manifestation is yet such a powerful reality. So the reality, and that's the reality that points us in the direction of anti-Semitism. The fact that there's an Ummah Achas, the fact that there's a nation that's considered an Ummah Achas, and nobody can even say why. That points to the Moira of Hashem. So not only is there a nitz of Kedusha in certain kinds of acts, but in fact, it's the kavanah that you should have when you say the word v'hanoira in Shemona Esrei. That there's an invisible and an unknowable, and yet very relevant kind of paradigm called Ummah Achas, called a certain nation being considered unique. It's considered one, even though that has no ramification or no reflection in any apparent reality. That is how you come face to face with the Kadosh Baruch Hu's Moira.